Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the No Ego podcast. If you've been listening for a while, you know that we talk about how to walk through life more skillfully, both at work and at home, how to loosen the grip that your ego has on the narration of your life, and how to bypass that ego and really see things as they are. And with that better information and a lot less fear and panic, you can be intentional and operate out of some love and some kindness. And I've been working the last many years in helping people professionally develop at work. And I think for me, the underlying assumption is that we were doing our personal evolution in our own time, that life evolved us and that our parents evolved us, and that many of us were involved in, whether it be seeking out just some great stuff from a therapist or from our own spiritual practices, or that in some way we were all personally developing. And I think what is being revealed to us in these current times. And these current times are tough, but there are times. They may be tough times, but they're ours. This is the landscape put in front of us for us to have impact. And I personally believe if we weren't up for the challenge of creating an inclusive, kind, globally sustaining world, that this would not be our challenge of the day in front of us. But what I'm seeing is, as this is put in front of us, it's revealing that a lot of us have over-rotated on hustle and and professional development, and how to get ahead and how to move forward, that we're doing that on a pretty shaky foundation. Because whether it's just that there's less attendance in formal religious entities for a lot of good reasons, they no longer seem relevant or are serving where people want to evolve to today. But some of those things that really organically ensured our personal development aren't in place in the same way that many of the formal things are involved in ensuring our professional development. And those of us doing professional development, we kind of slide into some of the personal stuff when we talk about EQ, or we talk about, getting clear on your own goal from the heart before you have a conversation. But I think we've been shying away from something. I think going forward that we can no longer separate personal development from professional development, and that we have to have a big focus on evolving yourself. In fact, I wore my Evolve Yourself t-shirt because what I'm really finding for so many of the people I'm working with is they don't need as much professional advice in how to move forward in a crisis. Sure, I'm giving that. Some people need that, but they're needing a lot more revisiting and strengthening their own practices of not just personal development, but evolution. Some of us have been able to skip some chapters of self-sustainability or emotional regulation or self-care that doesn't involve mommy deserves a glass of wine because kids are so wild. Like parenting. I mean, I'm working with people as they come to me and say, my issue is professional. I'm watching how their issue is personal. Boundary setting, parenting skills, faith in the fact that the universe has your back, or as Einstein said, at least the world's benevolent. It's not working against you. Like, I'm watching as people don't necessarily understand how the world works, so they're getting played by their ego, and they're arguing with reality. They don't understand how their mind works, so they're getting played by their ego, and they're arguing with reality. And, if you don't understand how your mind works, you're in the grips of ego. You're going to always be filtering everything that happens today through your reaction to what is happening and your ego's intensity around what's happening, filled with fear, and all your family of origin, like the inner child stuff, that is all this unhealed wounds and trauma, like such a small percentage of your response to what's happening, if you're not working on awareness, has anything to do with what's actually happening. And so if you don't know how your mind works, you're going to get played by your ego. You're going to look for the familiar and recreate, the dysfunctional. And if you don't know how the world works, you're going to put energy in working to resist when you need to accept. You're going to put energy into holding on when you need to let go. Like our inability to just grieve or just be with feelings, or there are people that I'm working with that are really shying away from the experience of just feel your feelings. They're like, yeah, but what do I need to do? I'm like, well, if you feel your feelings, the information is in there. That's good information. If you feel your own anger, it might tell you where to set a boundary. If you feel your own sadness, it might tell you it's time to let go. Like, I can't tell you, here's what you do. And a lot of people are looking for, what can I do? And we're going back to a foundation of, first, let's talk about how to be. All of this being said is a focus where I'm taking what I teach you professionally and I'm merging that workplace and worldplace. And I feel so grateful that I go back to some of my background as a counselor, but also my own therapy journey and my own self-help journey. And right now, there are fantastic therapists out there, but there's also fantastic information for those of you that just want to do like self-healing, like just go on the journey and, get information from kind of many, many, many different places. And it's really being revealed, folks. I read one study that said 75% of Americans across the board are saying that they are experiencing some symptoms of anxiety or depression, that a third of all Americans are despairing for our future. They feel a bit without hope, that the first kind of health crisis certainly is going to be, the pandemic and the awakening and really intense, amplified discussions about social injustice and systemic racism and right. That's the first kind of pandemic. The second pandemic is really going to be a mental health pandemic. And what that's revealing is just how many needs we have. And I see it. So that has called me to want to connect with you in a way that takes us deep and into not therapy. I'm no longer practicing any counseling, but it helps people know the basics about how you can evolve and how you can develop that other piece. So what I'm excited to announce is the book I'm writing is a lot more about the principles I teach and how to live those on the daily and where they came from. And I'm telling a lot of personal stories, as I like to do, not to brag about having become so evolved, but to show you that you can't evolve beyond the messiness of life. It's in the messiness of life that you evolve and re-evolve and learn a lesson and learn it again and get to screw it up and try and do something different. But there's some basic parts of living a happy life regardless of what's going on in your circumstances, the ability to not have your joy or state of contentment dependent upon your circumstances, to be able to get your own psychological safety, to be portable, to really step up and do yourself a favor in so many ways. And with that, I've noticed my work is evolving to helping people evolve themselves. So we're making it official. In the end of October, I'm kicking off what we're calling Life's Messy, Live Happy. That's the title of my book. is even though life is messy, there are ways that you can maintain gratitude and contentment and experience joy, even in the midst of a lot of other feelings. You can have multiple feelings at one time. You can feel joy and anger really at the same time. You can feel hope for the future and intense anger about what's happening today. So I'm so excited to announce a group we're starting late October called Life's Messy, Live Happy. Joining this group, you enter into a year-long experience with me, yours truly. It is an experience where we will gather together for monthly Zoom calls, and I will be giving you exclusive content. So I'll be doing some teaching in every Zoom call of some work that you probably haven't ever heard before from me. And then I'll be doing coaching and assignments for self-reflection and really calling you up to spend a month really focused on a new competency that you're going to need to move through the world, the modern world, and you're going to need to be a great parent if that's what you choose, a great partner if that's what you choose, a great global citizen, hopefully you choose that, to be a good friend, to really live a good life. And in these monthly Zoom calls, I'll give you some content, we'll do some coaching, and then we will have a closed group for the cohort where we can discuss the topics at hand, and you can all bring in all the other amazing teachers or things that you're reading and share this enormous resource that we built by crowdsourcing, like everybody bringing what's helpful to them together, and I'll be in and out of that group all month and giving you additional exclusive content. So I think it's going to be really exciting. If you're feeling unsettled right now, if you're suspecting that this crisis in our world today has brought you a big message, a big wake-up call. If you're called to emerge better, to live a different life, to have some post-traumatic growth, which is profound transformation. And by the way, that was the other good news. I think the study I read was like 73% or something of Americans report that they have found some really meaningful transition or transformation in their life, given what they're going through, that they can see themselves growing and developing and emerging better, that they've made some good changes in their life. And so we're going to talk about things like what keeps us from sustaining the changes that we have from these transformative experiences. All of that in this group. It's called Life's Messy, Live Happy group. And you're going to be the first to get a lot of content from my newest book that will be coming out next September. And you're going to get a lot of access to coaching from me. So I really hope for those of you that want to take this experience and you are willing to be evolved by it, you want to go and get what you came for, I want you to hit the link below and really understand how you can come with us. And the link below in the description, right, will take you there. And we'll be putting out a ton on social media and other places in the copy for you to get involved. But it's starting the end of October. So I need you guys all in. It's a year's commitment, once a month, but I promise you it will be mind-blowing. And some of the things that we're going to talk about, folks, in Life's Messy, Live Happy group, some of the things I'm going to be bringing to you, you've already seen some of it, is that shift towards some topics that I think will be helpful and relevant to you today. Because if we haven't gone inside, if we haven't done the inner evolution, the contemplation, the self-reflection, the cultivating virtues like patience and the ability to allow as much as we try and impact, if we haven't gotten to those more evolved set of competencies, then what you do in the world, I can tell you what to say and what to do as a leader, but it will be somewhat transactional and less transformative. If you can't go inside and develop the wisdom that comes with discernment and kind of EQ, then when you come out with the techniques outwardly, they're a little less loving than they need to be. So the more someone's evolving internally, the more they can take the things that I recommend and preach in reality-based leadership and put those out into the world with a huge foundation of love. And that's why the pieces that I preach are connected. It's like evolve yourself so that when you walk in the world, you remember that love wins. And it's a way of finding your ongoing journey to be able to move forward. So one of the things I was just writing about that I want to talk about in the next two podcasts is gratitude. Now, I was surprised when I was in a conversation and people wanted us to write in two emotions, starting a Zoom meeting, just to check in and connect, two emotions that you're feeling right now. And as I looked at what people were writing and just accepting wherever they were at, most of the emotions were pretty negative. Some of them were all positive, but there's two words. And I put furious and grateful. And not that I'm so quick and clever, but what it reminded me of, because somebody commented on that, they're like, how can you be both those things at once? Isn't it just like you're in a bad place or you're in a good place? And if you're in a good place, you're out of touch. If you're not in a bad enough place, you don't care that much. And it was like, our feelings, our ego even co-opts our feelings. So if our feelings are on the spectrum of blissful and, I don't know, pain, intensity, fury, what the ego likes to do is narrow your vision and experience of the world down to one and get you into either or. Like if I'm feeling fury, I can't feel gratitude. And I see this a lot in my family. This year we lost our sweet 15-year-old nephew, Drew, last February in a car accident. He and his best friend were killed while out hunting. And I see as my family goes through this journey of grief that when we catch ourselves being joyful, we kind of go, oh, wait a minute. If we're feeling joy, we must not be grieving Drew enough. And that the ego really wants you to have an identity. Are you the grieving mom or are you the joyful sister that is enjoying the lake? Because you can't be both. The ego wants to take from us and this experience that's deep and satisfying and feeding who we are, the full experience of life when you're present fully into the now. And it's polarity, it's duality. It wants us to narrow in on a tiny portion of that because then we feel like continually a little less satisfied because we didn't get the whole experience of our feelings. It's like having this beautiful meal and you only get a taste of it in the moment. And then you have to wait to another moment to get another taste. And we're hoping over tasting little tiny parts of this for a month, you get the idea of what the dinner could have been like. Like our ego will just lead us to smaller and smaller experiences that are less and less satisfying. So we walk with this weird angst and anxiety about like, why don't I feel like fulfilled? Why don't I feel, oh, I better go outside myself and hustle more, or I need to chase the next relationship, or I need to, have a glass of wine to feel more calm. Like, I want us to know that whole spectrum, there's so many big ands in there that you can feel a range of feelings. And the wider the range that you can feel in any moment, I believe is the more alive you can be, that you can feel gratitude and fury at the same time. And I want people to understand that it's more than just a feeling caused externally. It can be a state of being. And so the question came like, how can you be grateful right now for what's happening in the world? And it reminded me, and I was also surprised because I was writing the chapter on gratitude, which turned into two chapters, is that gratitude isn't just feeling a feeling when external things are in my favor or when I can identify things I prefer. Like gratitude, it can be more of a state of being. And so my gratitude practice evolved into, there are some things that I haven't yet found a way to be grateful for. Like, I can't be grateful that on TV each night I see continued examples of brutality. I can't find gratitude for that. And so there are times where I can't be grateful for what's happening, but what I know is I can be grateful in the moment, right? I can't be grateful for it, but I can be grateful while it's going on. Like, it's a difference. I can be grateful in the midst of it. I can have a sense of gratitude and appreciation and acknowledgement, actually, of my own privilege in the moment while what's happening is outrageous. That's a sophisticated, deeper level of sensing the world. You get a lot better information and wisdom. So when you go forward, you are acting with a lot more of your intelligence. And it was those things I started thinking, okay, like, how did my gratitude practice start? And memories started flooding back, because I think that's an unusual way to move through the world, that you can not necessarily find gratitude for all that is happening, but you can be grateful, you can be thankful, you can have a heart acknowledging all of the things given to you in the moment. And I went clear back, and it's easy for our brains to see negativity. We're like wired to look for danger, and we're wired to over-rotate on what might be a threat or what might cause us pain rather than pleasure. So you can get 100 compliments, and one person can say, well, I guess I'm really not liking that. And what do we focus on? Like, the one negative. It's almost like we're biologically, in fact, it's not like that. We are biologically wired to focus on the negative. So I was in college. I was in my first psychology class, and I was learning about the brain and how we're kind of wired for the negative. And went home with my boyfriend at the time to Thanksgiving. And I'd never really heard about gratitude lists or any of that. This is like back in the 80s, right? So at Thanksgiving, as I go home with him, this beautiful Thanksgiving table set up, and it just was like this calm, peaceful, cool environment. And his parents started the Thanksgiving dinner with just a talk about gratitude, what we're grateful for. And they said that they had written everything they're grateful for on a piece of paper. And they passed the piece of paper around, and it was completely blank. There was nothing on the paper. And so they're such like happy, kind people. I'm like, huh. And then what they did was kind of laugh about the experience of not seeing anything for all of us. And they held this piece of paper over candles. And the heat from the candles made writing appear. They made something out of like egg whites, and that was like invisible ink. And the heat, as it kind of cooked it, made the writing appear. And the whole page just had so many things on it. And it was a cool reflection. It was a cool introduction for me of gratitude, because I'm like, you know what? If I don't train my vision away from my natural human condition, then there are so many things around me that I can be grateful for that I just don't see, that I'm not tuning in on those things. Like, I could work on improving my vision. And I left really inspired. And I do things big when I do them. I thought, I'm going to start a gratitude practice. And I read up on it, and I'm going to make a gratitude list. And Oprah had recommended like a gratitude journal. And I sat down, and it's like each night, what are the 10 things I'm grateful for? And if I wasn't home, I mean, it could be on the restaurant napkin that I want to count like what I'm grateful for. And it was, it made, I think, me walk through life more positive. Like, I improved my vision so I could tune in and see the things that were at times invisible, or what I felt like the heat of the candle represented is that sometimes it takes some heat in life for us to center in on our true blessings, right? And it was a cool like awakening. It was really, really nice. And you'll hear later how it got a bit transactional, like I was counting things up, how it got a bit shallow at times, because what I started to realize is that by writing down what I was grateful for in the next evolution, I really was just listing out what my ego preferred in the moment. So I was listing as grateful things that I was like, universe, yes, more of this. I wouldn't write down all of it. Like, so how do you go from like counting your blessings to counting everything as a blessing? That's the graduate course that we'll talk about next podcast. But what I first noticed is I was having this great time of reflection, and that I had a sense that the real work would becoming grateful for it all. But my early work was just starting to name things I was grateful for. And it became transactional as I listed that. It was just like an accumulation. Like, I'm grateful I have money in my savings account. I'm grateful that my car didn't break down today. I'm grateful for a check that came in the mail at the right time. I'm grateful that my kids are healthy. And so it was kind of accounting for that. And it was almost like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it got transactional as I'm counting it. As I said, it was like a list of what my ego preferred, but it was all good things. But I was just a little unsettled. And I was accumulating things, but still feeling a bit unsatisfied. So I had an aha when I was in a yoga retreat, and one of my teachers, Paul Gould, said, where you give your attention determines the quality of your life. And so I thought, well, wait a minute, rather than just listing these things, what if I put some attention? What if I pause and really allowed the awe of what I had, really appreciated something? And what I learned from that step was appreciation grew the value of that very thing in my life. So I didn't need more things to put on my list. If I really focused with added appreciation to everything on my list, it got a lot more satisfying. I started to be able to appreciate pretty minimal things and really tune into that. I don't need a lot of things. I don't need a lot of blessings. That if I really appreciate what I have, it really grows its value in my life. And life started to become not just more positive, but more satisfying, like more scrumptious. Like, and I think some of us are experiencing now that some of the most simple things, we're really growing their value in our life through appreciation. Like, instead of being out shopping, we're like using what we have, and we're finding ways to innovate and recommission and upcycle things. And we're starting to appreciate moments that were always in our life, but game night at home was like maybe a have to keep the kids entertained, now becomes just something we can really let it fill us up. It's like it's soul food. It's food that feeds our soul. And a lot of people would tell me, like, I'm tired and sleep doesn't help. And it's like, well, when your soul's tired, sleep's not the cure. It's presence, and it's really appreciating what we had. And so I felt like I evolved. I started being more positive. I evolved. I started to be much more grateful for what I had and less needful of what I needed to accumulate. And so that was going well. And then my gratitude practice evolved again. And this evolution was profound. So early in my career, as all this was going on, I was asked to be on a radio interview. And back in the day before like podcasts, there was like these live streaming radio shows that could be heard kind of across the nation. And so it was a big deal. It was like to get noticed and be asked to be interviewed, like I thought could really help my business. It was super important. And so the host of the show said, let me send you lessons So, to prepare for the interview, she sent me a list of questions because it just wasn't something you did every day to prepare for the interview. And the list of questions were all about how did you, as a founder, grow your business? And how did you come up with the idea for your business? And how did you, find opportunities and capitalize on them? How have you, as a leader, created such a valuable asset? How did you get published? And as I'm preparing for these questions, it was all about like I hustled and I worked hard, and that just wasn't the case. I mean, yes, I worked hard, but everything that was like the answer, like she wanted me to be like this powerful woman who just said, like I created this and I went out and I was smarter and I did all of this, and it just didn't fit for me. So as she had given me these questions and we're preparing for the interview, I'm struggling. So I thought, okay, I know what I'm grateful for. So let me go look at what of those I thought were key ingredients in achieving some success. And as I looked through the gratitude list, it hit me. I couldn't claim a single one of those as solely because of me. Like sometimes in spite of me, I got what I needed. Sometimes I participated well with the forces of the world and got what I needed. But there wasn't one thing on that list, if I were honest, if I were outside my ego, that I could say, I created, I did this. I worked, I followed up, I kept my commitments for the most part. But as the day came for the interview, I got more and more nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this woman's looking for, tell other women how you became a powerhouse and what's the formula? How did you do it? And as I got on her show, I'm just like, well, I was realizing as I was prepping, like I, treated people well and I tried to respond to what they needed so they would be there when I needed it. And I guess I was smart. When I had an idea, I would go out to some others and have them help me shape it. And those just were not what she was looking for. She kept giving me these like follow-up questions like, yeah, but talk about how you hustled, and yeah, talk about how your idea like pounded out the rest. And I'm like, it's not true for me. And during that preparation, by the way, the interview failed. It was never aired. I never gave her what she wanted to. And I'm just like, oh, my career is over. It left me with this sinking feeling in my stomach as I looked through my gratitude list, because what I came to realize was not one thing on my list was what I created alone. That list of what I was grateful for was filled with how I was privileged over another, how I was lucky, how people bestowed on me blessings, how people gave me a hand up, or how people forgave me when I didn't fulfill the contract as they had hoped. Like it was so filled with that which came from others that I did nothing to get, that the people in the universe just provided in spite of my imperfections. Like that list was not filled with what Cy did to hustle. It was filled with a lot of things to be grateful for, but sometimes on the back of others, or sometimes at the exclusion of others, or sometimes, and it kind of started breaking my heart open on my own humility, where, but for the grace of God, go I. Like so much of what I have and have been able to accomplish and the world I've been able to see wasn't about my hustle. It wasn't about my superior intellect, and it wasn't about my innovation or my genius, because everything I teach you, somebody has taught and probably taught better before. All of that just crumbled away, and I was just left with profound humility. And that gratitude practice, when it was like popped open, that humility was really the first step in me starting to recognize that we are telling an ego story, that that person has a lot more wealth because they hustled more, or they worked harder, or good job for all of you that set a goal and hustled after. Good job. And we can't ignore the ego wants us to narrow our vision down on this linear path that I came up with an idea, I out hustled people, I got it done. And sometimes there's a lot of evidence that the person who's just consistently willing to walk in the direction of their dreams achieves some things or experiences some things or changes the world in some ways. But this was bigger than that. It was a profound realization of the fact that most of what's on my gratitude list was just me being provided for. And yep, there was opportunity I might have stepped into, but probably anybody else that had the same goals as me would have. And that led to kind of this melting and my heart breaking open in a very compassionate way. And that compassion turned into my acknowledgement that most of what I'm grateful for was given to me, at least in partnership or in response to, or just undeservingly mine for the taking. That this wasn't about me going out taking. A lot of this just got delivered and arrived. And I had to do a few things like say yes to it. But in that, I started to have a lot more compassion for others with some of the same goals, or others that maybe didn't have the same setup I had, or others that didn't have the same privilege, because my ego wanted me to focus on what I was grateful for, what I approved of, and then claim all of it, like I made that happen. And then my ego wanted to use that to judge others, to say, well, if they don't have it, they're just not pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. And so this whole process started to open me up to the fact that when I look at that gratitude list, my job on this planet is to make sure that anybody, if they chose to, if they wanted to, if they, wanted to do some of the things I did, anybody could have that same gratitude list. Like that list isn't just something I could have because who I am, that list is something both what people went after, but also what we fixed in access, that any one of us in the world could have similar gratitude lists. That my gratitude list isn't my ego saying, here's how I'm superior, that my gratitude list should show me where the gap is, that if everybody can't possibly write that same gratitude list, like we've got enough food, or I had books when I was a kid, if people can't do that, that's our work together. And once I realized that, I'm like, oh my gosh, do I have to give away all my wealth? Do I have to go live a life of poverty? Do I have to sell my Louis Vuitton bag, right? And the ego wanted me to go to this extreme to make some point on my beliefs. And instead I chose the path of, as I know better, I'll do better. And let's just go where this goes. And what it did for me in the end is it made generosity to me. It made the work that I was called to do as far as giving really personal. So now the work I do where I volunteer and the work I do where I tithe and give extra money isn't just I want to feel better or from superiority. Well, I have so much, I'll help some folks who need it. It was so much more organic from kind of an internal evolution where it was, let me be present in the moment and let me find ways to give to others how I was given to that made the biggest difference in my life. And an example of that is today I'm involved in Dibs for Kids. And it started in Omaha, but we're taking it national. I'm on the board, and I just love this. It is simply a program in the school system that requires no more work from the teachers, that kids can self-serve themselves so that they can go home with a book every night. Our mission is to make sure that every kid has a book with some characters that look like them and languages that they also speak, that every kid every night has a book in their house. And it's really a big deal to me because when I thought about being grateful for being an author and being grateful for people buying my books and being grateful when I look around my house today that of any other possession in the world, what I have the most of, what you'll be dividing up upon my death, is my books I love books, and I'm always happy. Like, I think I could be like living on the curb, and if I had a book, I really would be in heaven. I love books, and I have to think back to my life because I didn't have books in my house, and I was the sixth of seven kids. So even the books I had were nasty, not in topic, but the pages were ripped. They'd been through like five other kids. Like, it was just like, here's the library of tired like children's books. And it wasn't that we were like so poor we couldn't afford books. Like, we had the Encyclopedia Britannica from the guy who came to the door, and we had world books. Like, my parents were anti-books. It just, on their list of priorities for seven kids, wasn't like, oh, let's figure out how to get Cy a book. So my trips to the library when I was little were like, I swear to you, like my trips to God. Like, once a week, I would get to go to this book thing at the library, usually Saturday mornings. I had this kids thing. And I just remember walking in. I love the smell of books. I love touching books. I love how books are organized. I love everything about books. Like, I'm book crazy, and I have been since I was little. I love books. And at the end of story hour, we would get to take a book home, a book that we chose. And you got to take a book. And I would spend so much time like trying to figure out like the perfect book. And I would get it home and I would read it multiple times. I was just an avid reader, and that book would last maybe a day. And I only got one book a week. And so I would go back like almost desperate for another book that next Saturday. And I tell you this story because here's how little, if you're in touch with if you're evolving and you're in touch with compassion for others, which can only be born from your acknowledgement of your own privilege and your own gratitude. Like, gratitude leads to appreciation, which leads to humility, which leads to compassion, which leads to generosity. You can be beautifully generous if you've done your inner work. So you can walk outside with love if you've done your inner work. And that's why, to help you, I want this group of people doing their inner work for the next year. I want to take my reality-based leadership fans and get them to do the work. So here's what I experienced. A couple of the librarians, and I wish I knew all of their names, but one was Sandy Anderson in my little town. And I'm like 6 years old. And by the way, I was reading at 4 because my brother went to kindergarten first, and he would come home and teach me everything he learned during the day in our after-school play. And so I went into kindergarten knowing kindergarten already. I just loved it. So the teacher, to keep me occupied, would have me kind of help other kids, which I started teaching early. So many people participated in me being able to do what I do for you today. But Sandy Anderson and her colleagues, beautiful librarians, noticed, I think, my desperation, how long it took me to pick out a book. They probably wanted to close. They closed at noon. How anxious I was to get back. And one day I came in and they said, Cindy, that was my name growing up, Cindy, can we talk to you? And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. And they kind of took me aside and they said, you know, our rule is that you only get one book, or maybe it was 2 books, I can't remember. But we noticed that you're a really fast reader and that you really enjoy your books. And so we're going to make an exception for you. Most generous thing. We're going to let you take up to 5 books home a week. Like, I got to have an exception, break the rule. Now, think about that generosity, that privilege, that maybe it could have gotten to be so anxiety producing that I just books weren't worth the stress in the love affair I had with them. Maybe it was a relationship I would have broken up with, but instead they fed that. They saw me as an individual, not as a class, not as a race. They saw me as a human, and they had this compassion, this empathy, and they said, how could we be generous and give her something that would open up her next door? How can we pass on what we had? And I tell you what, that flame, that fueled the flame of my love of reading. And ultimately, it's hard for me to believe now I'm an author. It's so surreal because I held authors up on this pedestal. But I'm here to tell you that if you want to take your gratitude to the next level. And there's even deeper levels. We'll talk about in our next podcast. This is the type of stuff I'm talking about in Life's Messy, Live Happy. This is the type of stuff that will build your resilience, that will help you as a coach at work to compassionately see what's a performance issue or lack of willingness or just lack of privilege or lack of access or lack of the privilege of generous people in their lives, that people who aren't just writing you off as, one of the wild door kids. Like, if you have looked at my brothers that went before me, you have never given me a book because you would have been pretty sure it'd be destroyed when I took it home. But these folks didn't paint me as one of the wild door kids. They painted me as the girl who loved books. They saw me. And I'm here to tell you that generosity, that my gratitude for being given books as a kid, when a friend, a co-author, Linda, called me up and said, I'm going off this board. Do you want on it? And she explained to me what the mission was. I'm like, are you kidding me? Now, I give a lot, but there's that type of giving that's like passionate, like you're present, you're involved, you're engaged. You're not just sitting on the board, getting through the board meeting. That giving, oh my gosh, that I was all in. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in. And what I love in my life is when your gratitude goes from being a list to a fuel, an internal fuel for what you do in the world. And so as I breathe in gratitude, I can breathe out generosity, but a generosity that's so customized to what made the difference in my life, where I was privileged and how I can pass that on. That when I can fuel what I give by what I was given, by that beyond ego experience of, but for the grace of God go I, by understanding my own privilege, by understanding the acts of others, I believe that when our generosity is fueled with that, it's no longer just money. It's no longer just time. It appreciates in value, where it becomes rectifying some wrongs and high impact stuff. So my hope for you is that over time you can take your gratitude list from a have to, or just naming things that are going well in your life or that you're happy about, and not going deeper with that, and realizing that most of the beautiful things in your life today were probably there not because of you 100%, but because of doors people opened for you or things that you were given. Like, I think it was at least Cory Booker who said it when I heard it. I don't know who early said it, but a lot of people think they scored a home run without realizing they were born on third base, right? And my hope for all of us is that we can take some of these practices that we've adopted but kind of trivialized. It's like, if you really look at Black Lives Matter, it's not just a trendy thing to put on your Instagram or a cool sweatshirt to wear. It's like being able to be an anti-racist, and in the moment when somebody goes, all lives don't matter, that you can go, no, we're pretty sure they do, but until Black Lives Matter, we can't really say all lives matter. We got to do the work in front of us. All lives aren't threatened right now, but some lives are. And so let's work on that. Like, until we can take what can be trendy and transactional, like a gratitude list, where it just becomes a habit and a way of a privileged person counting, their blessings. I want us to take what we have commercialized and made transactional, and I want to take you back into how you can take some of these key practices that many beliefs talk about and really be transformed by them, make those practices transformational, but also be evolved and transformed by them. And this is just an example. And we're not even into the deep stuff yet, because then I had to go on and write a chapter 2, where the true beauty of gratitude is not when you can just count your blessings, but when you count every single thing in your life as a blessing, as you can find a way to just receive it with neutrality and really understands that everything's happening in our favor. So even this falling apart, I'm so excited. I'll get to that later about the world falling apart because, oh my gosh, we're all home, front row seat with a lot of time to experience what life could be like if we don't continue to evolve ourselves and then to be more capable of moving through the world with just a ton of love for not just the human race, but all of the species out there. So, more to come. I'm very excited. Please check out our new group, Life's Messy, Live Happy. We pre-announced it at the Ditch the Drama Tour, and enrollment just flew in. So I want you to sign up for it. It's going to be 12 mind-blowing sessions. It's not going to be stuff out there on the airways. I'm giving you a sample of gratitude because I want you to know kind of how we're going to go deep in this, but there'll be just so much more. So this week, notice something you're grateful for. Here's your assignment for self-reflection. And then just sit with it. How much of that really happened because of you? Truly. Like, what was your big role? Saying thank you, being open to the gift. Like, sure, you had to have the courage to step in and do something with it, but how much really had to do with you? And how much are you appreciating it to grow its value so that you can be satisfied with what you have so that you stop the pining for what you don't have? Like that soul craving, you can stop that through gratitude. You can realize your own privilege through gratitude. And as you get humble and your heart breaks open with compassion, how could you do something today that connects your gratitude with a kind act that you can do for another? That's your assignment. Try this on for size. So excited to have you as part of the podcast. If you're loving this podcast, then please go out and rate it. That's how other people find out about us. And make sure you're sharing it with others. So be well, be safe, be kind to one another this week.